You're not done. You're not outdated, and you're not invisible. What you've learned over decades can't be Googled. Stop chasing relevance by trying to mimic or be like the people around you. Instead, settle into the depth that you carry with you. There is a grounded power that you have from your experience and wisdom that only time can cultivate. So you can have, all the book knowledge in the world, but only time, seasoned time, experience, year after year can cultivate that wisdom. You're allowed to evolve. You're not the same person you were 10 years ago. You want different things. And leave what's no longer a fit. So stop trying to be who you were 10 years ago and build something new, not to prove your worth, but to live who you are now. Your value doesn't expire, but your environment might stop recognizing your value. When experienced leaders withdraw, we don't just lose voices, we lose memory, we lose perspective, and we lose that embodied wisdom that doesn't seem to be valued so much in some organizations. Welcome to The Inner Edge, a podcast about leadership, self-mastery, resilience, and reinvention. Welcome back. Today we're stepping into a topic that so many people bring up behind closed doors, but rarely speak about in public. This episode is about the experience of feeling undervalued after 50. And I want to say right now, you're not imagining it. You're not alone. It's happening in organizations everywhere. You're not oversensitive. You're waking up to something that's quietly eroding the confidence and joy of brilliant, seasoned leaders. And I'm hearing this daily. I hear these kinds of stories. And let me start out. A senior leader, and senior, I don't mean senior as in age, I mean senior as in hierarchy, title. So let's say executive. An executive leader told me recently that he was described in succession planning, they were doing the succession planning process, as a blocker. And what's a blocker? A blocker is someone who is occupying a role that a younger person could be promoted to. And so this executive was 55 and still 10 years from retirement, according to him. He didn't want to retire. 55 was not where he wanted to retire. He was thinking he was going to retire around 65 or 66. And he was still doing excellent work. He was doing all the things. He was a pro, basically, in his role. But now he was being talked about in these succession planning meetings as an obstacle, as somebody who, wow, he's in this role and now we can't promote Jerry. And so he started to feel, obviously, like, hey, I'm a blocker. I'm a blocker? Seriously? And then there was the woman. There was a woman I was talking to, a seasoned innovator, a woman who had accolades all the time. She was kind of a visionary type of person at work who had groundbreaking projects that had pretty much changed the whole face of the company over the past couple decades. And she sat in a meeting while much younger colleagues would suggest ideas. So there are people like they're 20 years old, younger than her, would say something, and those ideas had come up 10 years ago. She had implemented them 10 years ago. And now these suggestions were met with praise, celebration, and, oh my gosh, this is the best thing since sliced bread, when in fact, she had implemented these things 10 years ago, but these folks didn't know about it because obviously it was 10 years later. And so she sat in the meeting feeling unacknowledged. It's like, oh, hold on. All the innovation that counts is if it's somebody new and somebody younger that is bringing it up. And if I brought that up, it's like, so what? We did that 10 years ago. So Very interesting take on this. And these are not isolated stories. I'm just giving you two examples. These are themes and patterns, and they carry a deep impact. What I see in these moments is kind of like an erosion, not of competence, but of confidence of people. Not because these leaders don't have the brilliance or the fire, because they still do, but because the systems around them have suddenly and subtly shifted. They're no longer seen as the future, they're seen as the past. And they're assumed to be associated with the past. And then the leaders that are there now are want to be associated with the future, so don't really want to be associated with them. Interesting, right? Think about that. And here's what no one tells you. Your value doesn't expire, but your environment might stop recognizing your value. And that's what this episode is really what I wanted to talk about is how do we reclaim visibility and worth even when the world seems to have moved on without us? And that's a really interesting thing that so many of my clients talk to me about, or people that are colleagues of clients or people that are in this age group tend to bring up quietly. They don't necessarily talk about it at work. So let me say it again. And I said this in my last episode when I talked about it's not too late to start anything. Let me say it again. You're not done. You're not outdated, and you're not invisible. What you've learned over decades can't be Googled. You can't go to AI and get all the experience and all of the wisdom that you've accumulated over the years. And it can't be replaced by a 90-minute webinar or a 3-day training program. It's wisdom, it's experience, it's themes, it's something that is not a framework or a one way of being. It's a accumulated knowledge and accumulated wisdom, seasoned wisdom over the years. And yet, because it doesn't come wrapped in new packaging or maybe even a youthful face, it can get overlooked because it's not new and shiny. And when we get overlooked enough, we start to internalize the message that, what I say doesn't matter. We start shrinking. We start second guessing. Sometimes we stop speaking up, not because we don't have something to say, but because we're not being heard. And so if we feel like we're being associated with the past, it's like, okay, I heard somebody, no kidding. Somebody said to me, probably about a month ago, said, you know what? I'm just going to focus on other things because I'm not valued. I'm not valued. And people are just waiting and feel like I'm, out to pasture. So I'll just sit back and I'll just wait and let other people come up with the ideas, the bright new ideas. This is where we lose something, and we lose something sacred, because when experienced leaders withdraw, we don't just lose voices. We lose memory, we lose perspective, and we lose that embodied wisdom that doesn't seem to be valued so much in some organizations. So today, I want to speak directly to those of you who have felt this creeping into you, who have felt invisible. And I want to offer you just a few things to hold on to and think about. First, this is not in your head. So this is not just something you're making up. Age bias is real. And, we're not going to go into all the research about this, but ageism is real. And it exists in hiring practices. It exists in promotion decisions. And it exists definitely in our cultural messaging. And I won't even go into that one. That's huge. You're not imagining it. And we know that's real. But also, it's not the full truth of who you are. It's made up. And so just a couple things I'd like you to remember. First of all, you don't need to be louder. You need to be anchored. So stop chasing relevance by trying to mimic or be like the people around you. Instead, settle into the depth that you carry with you. There is a grounded power that you have from your experience and wisdom that only time can cultivate. So you can have, all the book knowledge in the world, but only time, seasoned time, experience, year after year can cultivate that wisdom. And your presence doesn't need to list your credentials. You don't need to list your past wins to feel important. You don't say, well, I did this or I did that. If you just show up present, attuned, clear, let your presence be felt. People may not see you at first, but they'll feel you because you'll be in a place that's not trying to prove. And that's really where it is. I think what happens is that we get into these places of trying to prove. And now I've got to prove myself again and prove myself again. It's not really about proving. It's about offering. It's about mentoring. It's about offering wisdom. And I think that's really, really powerful. And then finally, I just a thought that came to me as I talk to people about this is that reinvention isn't about changing who you are. And we really are talking about reinvention here because you're seeing yourself and your identity a little bit different than you did before. You're seeing yourself as a wise person who has a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge to share rather than shrinking and holding it back. It's about coming home to who you are now and really thinking about that you're allowed to evolve. You're not the same person you were 10 years ago. You want different things and leave what's no longer a fit. So stop trying to be who you were 10 years ago and build something new, not to prove your worth, but to live who you are now and to live and to share that wisdom. So don't be afraid to share that wisdom. You're not invisible. And I want to close with a few reflection questions that I think is important if you're feeling invisible. Where have you been dimming your voice to fit in the room? What assumptions are you making about how others see you? And are those assumptions serving you now? And what would it look like to lead from a place that doesn't need permission to take up space now? Think about that. You're not too old. You're not a blocker. You're not irrelevant. You're becoming someone new, better, and you're evolving. You're at the inner edge.